When I was 10 years old, my parents died on their way to pick up my brother from prison. At the funeral home, I stared at the man kneeling by the caskets. My brother just released after serving 5 years. I rushed at him and shoved him with all my strength. This is all your fault. If you hadn't been in prison, Mom and Dad wouldn't have gone to get you. They wouldn't be dead. Damien stumbled from my push but didn't look up. He just kept praying harder. From that day on, I never called him my brother again. Mom kept treasures in an old metal box. Young and curious as I was, I couldn't resist sneaking a look when the adults weren't home. Inside the box was a very old ultrasound report. It read, umbilical cord blood match. Successful donor, fetus recipient Damien. Damien was my brother, 15 years older than me. For as long as I could remember, he'd been in prison. Mom and Dad never talked about what he'd done. But every time they came back from visiting him, Mom's eyes would be swollen from crying, and Dad would chain smoke in silence all night. Before I turned 10, everything I knew about my brother amounted to this: a blurry name, a stranger who made our parents cry, and the entire reason for my existence. Yes, I knew I was never the product of my parents' love. I was just proof of how much they loved him. Mom's health was poor. She risked a late-life pregnancy with me, only because Damien had leukemia and needed cord blood from a newborn to survive. The day I was born, Damien's surgery was a success. And me, I was just a useful tool in this family. Karma's funny that way. Who would have thought the brother wrapped in our parents' love would commit murder and end up behind bars? I was 5 that year. I was too young to remember why Damien went to prison. Not that it mattered. What mattered was that I would go from being the family's tool to being Mom and Dad's only child. That didn't last long. When I turned 10, Damien was released. Mom and Dad left early that morning, full of hope about giving him a fresh start. Then the news came. A truck's brakes had failed. It crashed into their car. Dad died instantly. Mom held on until we got to the hospital. She only said one thing to me: "Claire, take care of your brother." I didn't understand. Why was I supposed to take care of him when I was the child who needed taking care of? Before I could argue with her, Mom closed her eyes. At the funeral home, I looked at the stiff smiles in Mom and Dad's photos, then at the stranger kneeling before their caskets. My brother, whom I hadn't seen in 5 years. His forehead pounded against the floor, blood seeping out and mixing with his tears. Relatives whispered, "There are stairs like needles in my back. Poor thing, losing her parents so young. Living with a murderer for a brother. What's going to happen to her?" I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. Then I rushed at him and shoved with all my strength. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't been in prison, Mom and Dad wouldn't have gone to get you. They wouldn't be dead." Damien stumbled but didn't look up. He just kept hitting his head against the floor harder than before. The night after the funeral, Damien found me in the dark living room. He wore an ill-fitting old shirt, his eyes sunken, looking like a skeleton. "Claire," his voice was hoarse as he reached to touch my hair. I dodged away. "Don't touch me," I said. His hand froze mid-air, then slowly dropped. We lived in a small town with no secrets, so it spread fast. Damien was out of prison, a murderer, the one blamed for our parents' deaths. And his little sister now lived with him. Back at school, my homeroom teacher paused at my name. "Claire, given your family situation, come to me if you need anything." Every head turned. During break, boys crowded my desk. "Did your brother really kill someone with a knife or a rope? Think you'll kill people too?" I hid my face and stayed silent. On the way home, girls pointed. "That's her, stay away. A murderer's sister can't be normal." I ran inside and dropped my bag. Damien was in the kitchen wearing Mom's old apron, frying an egg. "You're home." He smiled awkwardly. "Dinner's almost." I snapped. "Why did you come back? Why didn't you just die in prison? Do you know what they say about me?" He rose from the pot, hiding his face. He turned off the stove, shoulders shaking. After a long time he said, "I'm sorry." That night I heard him crying in the living room, muffled and broken. I didn't go out. I hugged Mom's pillow and told myself I hated him. If not for him, my parents would still be alive. If not for him, I wouldn't be stared at every day. He survived because of my cord blood and repaid it by ruining my life. Damien started working non-stop. Construction by day, market stalls at night, odd jobs past midnight. His health was bad. He coughed constantly, face always pale. But he spent everything on me: clothes, books, a new backpack. He took care of me. The town didn't let me breathe. In 8th grade, I ranked first for parent-teacher night. He borrowed a clean shirt and combed his hair. The whispers followed him into the classroom. "That's her brother. Doesn't look like one. You can't tell by the face." He kept his head down the entire time. On the way home, watching his bent back, I said, "Let's move." He stopped. "Where? Anywhere. Everyone here knows what you are." After a long silence, he said, "Okay." A month later, we moved 200 miles away. He spent all our savings on a tiny studio. Bunk beds, factory shifts. That first night staring at the cracked ceiling, I asked, "Why did you go to prison?" Silence stretched between us. "I did something wrong," he said at last. "What kind of wrong?" "Something very bad." His voice was barely there. "Don't ask anymore. Just know I'm sorry." I turned to the wall, always like this. I was never meant to know the truth. Apparently miracles do happen. After working at the electronics factory for half a year, Damien caught the eye of the boss's daughter. The boss's daughter was named Vivian, 5 years younger than Damien, fresh out of college, sent by her father to learn management at the factory. Supposedly the moment she saw Damien, she couldn't look away. Fine. I'll admit, Damien was good-looking. Even I couldn't deny it. Despite being malnourished, by always looking exhausted, he'd inherited all of our parents' best features: deep eyes, a straight nose, and when he was quiet, a kind of broken beauty. Vivian pursued him so openly that the whole factory knew he brought him meals, medicine, even kept him company when he worked late. His co-workers all urged him, "Damien, just say yes. That's the boss's daughter. You'd skip 20 years of struggle." Damien always shook his head. "I'm not worthy." Until Vivian's father, Mr. Palmer, himself, came to talk to him. Damien came home very late that night and sat in the dark living room, smoking cigarette after cigarette. He never usually smoked. "What's wrong?" I couldn't help asking. He stubbed out his cigarette, his voice dry. "Mr. Palmer knows I was in prison." My heart sank. Of course. The background check came through. That was it. He'd lose his job. We couldn't stay in the city anymore. He asked me about what happened back then. Damien continued. I told him everything. I closed my eyes in despair. And then Damien looked up. His eyes strangely bright in the darkness. Said next month has an auspicious date. And asked if I wanted a traditional or Western-style wedding. I was stunned. He must be crazy. I thought. Mr. Palmer must be insane to want a murderer for a son-in-law. But good for him being crazy. I also thought. After all, the Palmer family was truly wealthy. Who wouldn't want to latch onto a family like theirs? Wedding was simple, just 10 tables set up in the factory cafeteria. Damien wore a rented suit, looking like a puppet. Vivian wore a white wedding dress, smiling sweetly. During the toast, she walked up to me, her expression complicated. You're Claire, right? She raised her glass. We're family now. I raised my soda. Without saying anything, she smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. On their wedding night, Damien moved into the Palmer family's 2-story house. I stayed in the rental apartment, thinking I could finally have some peace. The next morning, Damien came to get me. Pack your things. You're moving in. I'm not going, Claire. For the first time, he used such a firm tone. You have to. Why? Vivian obviously doesn't like me. Because you're my sister. Damien looked at me, his eyes suddenly reddening. You're my only family left in this world, Claire. I can't leave you behind. In the end, I moved in. Vivian prepared a room for me. North-facing, small but clean. She was polite on the surface, but that politeness carried an icy distance. I could feel it. She hated me. Not me as a person, but the identity of Damien's sister living at the Palmers. I describe it as living under someone else's charity. Vivian never mistreated me. Food, clothes, everything. Even better than what many of my classmates had. But she barely spoke to me, looking at me like I was a defective product. She had no choice but to accept. Damien was caught in the middle, growing quieter and quieter. He got promoted to team leader at the factory, became busier, and when he came home, he still had to deal with Vivian and her extremely controlling father. I could see his exhaustion, but he never complained. When I was 15, I got into Central High, the best high school in the state. Most importantly, Central was a boarding school. The day I got my acceptance letter, Damien was happy as a kid, especially cooking a whole table of dishes. Vivian was happy too, happier than Damien. Even at dinner, she gave me a genuinely warm smile for once. They're so impressive. Boarding school is great. You can focus on your studies. I understood what she meant. I'd be boarding so she wouldn't have to see me every day anymore. The night before school started, Damien came to my room and handed me a bank card. The pin is your birthday. If you need anything, buy it. Don't try to save money. Does Vivian know? Yes. He wasn't telling the truth. I could see the unease in his eyes. Don't worry, I said. I'll study hard and become independent soon. Then I won't be a burden to you guys anymore. Damien opened his mouth to say something, but ended up just ruffling my hair. Claire's all grown up. His palm was warm, but I pulled away. I did well at school. Nobody knew my family background. I finally be a normal student. Good grades, a few friends I could talk to, and sometimes I'd even dream about the future. I'd go to college far, far away from here. Get away from this place completely. Get away from Damien completely. When I came home for winter break in 10th grade, I noticed Damien had lost a lot of weight. It's nothing, just work stress. He brushed it off. But Vivian seemed unusually anxious, snapping at everything. One night, I got up for water and heard them arguing in the master bedroom. You have to be hospitalized. How long do you think you can keep dragging this out, Vivian? Just wait a bit longer. The factory has been. The factory. Do you have a death wish? I quietly retreated to my room, an ominous feeling settling in my chest. After New Year's, Damien collapsed on the factory floor. The diagnosis, end-stage kidney failure. He needed a transplant. In the hospital corridor, the smell of disinfectant was pungent. I looked at Damien unconscious in the bed. He was so thin he looked skeletal, his hands covered in needle marks. Vivian sobbed into her hands, shoulders shaking. The attending physician was a family friend of the Palmers, Dr. Harrison, and he was blunt. It's best to have a close family member donate. Highest success rate, lowest rejection risk. I almost blurted out, use mine. Vivian's head snapped up, eyes bloodshot. No, why not? I was confused. I'm his sister. The match rate would be high. I said no. Her voice was shrill. Claire, this isn't your concern. When Damien woke up, I brought it up again. His reaction was extreme. He nearly jumped out of the hospital bed. Absolutely not, Claire. Don't even think about it. Why? Because I'm your brother. He grabbed my hand with frightening strength. Listen to me. Study hard. Go to college. My situation. I'll handle it myself. How will you handle it? Waiting for a donor could take forever. The doctor said. Your condition then? I'll wait. He cut me off. His eyes more severe than I'd ever seen. Claire, if you dare go behind my back to get tested, I will never forgive you, ever. I was scared by the determination in his eyes. What confused me more was Vivian's attitude. Someone who hated me so much should be thrilled at the idea of me trading a kidney for her husband's life. But this time she stood firmly with Damien. I went to find Dr. Harrison, wanting to secretly get tested for compatibility. Dr. Harrison looked at me hesitating. Claire, your brother specifically told me not to use you as a match. Why? Dr. Harrison sighed. He said. Dr. Harrison sighed. A sound heavy with years of keeping secrets that weren't his to tell. He looked at me, then at the thick file on his desk. Claire, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. There's a reason your brother and Vivian are so adamant. It's not just about protection. It's about the medical reality of your birth. He pulled out a yellow document from the bottom of the file. It was a surgical report from the day I was born. You were a savior sibling, yes, Harrison continued. But the procedure to harvest your cord blood was complicated. There were complications during your delivery. To save Damien back then, the doctors had to push the limits of what a newborn could endure. You were born with a compensatory renal strain. Your left kidney is undersized, barely functional. Your right kidney does 90% of the work. I felt the world tilt. So, I only have one working kidney. Functionally, yes. If you donated it, you wouldn't just be helping him. You would be putting yourself on dialysis for the rest of a very short life. Damien has known this since he was 15. He made your parents promise, before they died, that they would never tell you, and that no one would ever touch your health for his sake again. He believes he already stole enough from you the day you were born. I sat there numb. The tool I thought I was. I wasn't even a functioning tool. I was a fragile thing he had been guarding in silence. But why did he go to prison, doctor? If he's this martyr, why did he kill someone? Harrison looked away. That is a truth I don't have the map for, Claire. You'll have to find that in the shadows of your own home. I didn't go back to the hospital that night. I went to the Palmer mansion. Vivian was out, likely at the bedside of the husband she loved with a desperate, possessive grip. I went to the basement. Behind the water heater, tucked into a crawl space, was the old metal box. I hadn't touched it since I was 10. I pried it open. Underneath the ultrasound report, there was a hidden compartment. Inside was a legal transcript and a series of letters addressed to the district attorney, never sent. I began to read, and my heart shattered. The murder wasn't a cold-blooded act. It happened when I was 5. Our father, a man driven to the brink by the medical bills for Damien's leukemia and the costs of my impending birth, had taken a second job as a security guard for a warehouse. One night, a group of local thugs, sons of the town's elite, had broken in. They weren't there to steal. They were there to cause chaos. In the scuffle, our father had pushed one of them. The boy hit his head on a concrete pillar and died instantly. Our father was a broken man. He was the only breadwinner. If he went to prison, the family would starve. Mom would lose the baby me. Damien would lose his treatment. Damien, barely 18, had walked into the police station and confessed. He claimed he had been the one at the warehouse. He knew the legal system would be lighter on a teenager with a clean record than on a man with a family. He traded 5 years of his youth, so our father could keep working to pay for my birth and his own recovery. Every time Mom and Dad visited him in prison, they weren't crying because they were ashamed of a murderer. They were crying because they were watching their son rot in a cell for a crime their father committed. The truck accident at age 10? It wasn't just failed brakes. I found a police report at the bottom of the box. The truck belonged to the family of the boy who had died in the warehouse. It was an act of revenge. Damien didn't just lose his parents. He lost the people he had sacrificed his life to protect. And then he came home to a 10-year-old sister who screamed that she hated him. And he took it. He took every shove, every insult, every cold look. He used his murderer reputation as a shield, letting the town hate him so they wouldn't look too closely at our father's ghost. I found Vivian in the hospital cafeteria the next morning. She looked like a ghost herself. I know, I said, sitting across from her. She didn't ask what I knew. She just stared into her black coffee. My father was the lawyer who helped cover it up, she whispered. That's why he let me marry him. Guilt. My father knew Damien was innocent. He watched that boy give up everything for a family that ended up in a graveyard anyway. Why didn't you tell me? I hissed, tears blurring my vision. You let me treat him like a monster. Vivian finally looked at me, her eyes flashing with a sudden, sharp anger. Because he begged me not to. He said, Claire is the only thing left that is clean in this family. Let her think I'm the bad guy. If she knows the truth, she'll spend her life trying to pay me back, and I want her to be free. He's dying, Vivian. I know, she sobbed, her composure finally breaking. And he's happy about it. He told me last night that if he dies, the debt is finally settled. He thinks his life is a currency he can spend to buy your happiness. Damien's condition plummeted 2 days later. He was drifting in and out of consciousness, his skin a sickly gray. I sat by his bed. I took his hand. The hand I had refused to touch for years. It was cold. Damien, I whispered. Brother. His eyes flickered open. He looked at me, confused, his mind clouded by toxins the kidneys couldn't filter. Claire? Are you okay? Did you finish your homework? I choked back a sob. Even at the edge of death, he was checking on the 10-year-old girl I used to be. I know everything, I said. His hand winced in mine. No, Claire, don't. I know you didn't do it. I know about Dad. I know about the cord blood. I leaned in close, my voice firm. And I know I can't give you my kidney, but I'm not letting you die to settle a debt I never asked you to pay. I turned to Vivian and Mr. Palmer, who were standing in the doorway. Mr. Palmer looked like a man who had spent 40 years carrying a lead weight in his chest. You have money, I said to Mr. Palmer. And you have connections. You helped bury the truth once. Now you're going to help find a donor. I don't care if you have to call every hospital in the country. I don't care if you have to spend every cent of the Palmer fortune. You owe him 5 years of his life, and you owe him his future. Mr. Palmer looked at Damien, then at me. For the first time, the powerful man looked small. The list is long, Claire. Money can't always. Then use your guilt. I shouted. Because if he dies, I will go to the press. I will tell the world what happened in that warehouse. I will ruin your name, your factory, and your daughter's life. Or, you can save the man who saved us all. It took 3 weeks. In a twist of what could only be described as cosmic justice, a donor was found. It was an altruistic donation from a man in a neighboring state. A man whose own life had been saved by a stranger years ago. The surgery lasted 12 hours. I sat in the waiting room, holding Vivian's hand. We didn't speak, but the ice between us had melted into a shared, terrified hope. When Dr. Harrison walked out, he wasn't wearing his professional mask. He was smiling. He's stable. The kidney started working the moment they hooked it up. It's a perfect match. 6 months later, the air in the small garden was crisp. Damien was sitting in a lawn chair, a bit thinner than before, but there was color in his cheeks. He was watching the sunset, a book resting on his lap. I walked out with 2 mugs of tea. I set one down beside him. He looked up and smiled. The first real smile I had seen from him since I was 5 years old. It wasn't awkward or broken. It was whole. You should be studying, Claire, he teased gently. Finals are coming up. I took a break, I said, sitting on the grass at his feet. We sat in silence for a long time. The town still whispered. Some people still looked at him sideways when he walked through the grocery store. But he didn't duck his head anymore. He walked with his shoulders back, the weight of the metal box finally emptied. I used to think I was just a tool, I said softly, staring at the horizon. A spare part born to keep you alive. Damien reached down and ruffled my hair. This time, I didn't pull away. I leaned into his touch. You weren't a tool, Claire, he said, his voice thick with emotion. When the doctors told Mom she could have another child to save me, she didn't do it just for the blood. She did it because she wanted me to have a reason to come back. She knew that if I had a sister, I would never give up. You didn't save my life with your blood, Claire. You saved it by existing. I looked up at him, the man who had been a stranger, a murderer, and a ghost in my life. I saw the deep eyes of our father, and the straight nose of our mother. But mostly, I saw the man who had loved me enough to let me hate him. I love you, brother, I said. Damien froze. A single tear escaped and ran down his cheek. He didn't say it back, he didn't have to. He just squeezed my hand, his grip strong and vital, as we watched the sun go down on the first day of the rest of our lives. The debt was paid. The silence was over. We were finally just a brother and a sister, breathing the same air, under a sky that no longer felt like it was falling.